In the heart of the Androxys cluster, where starlight shimmered through nebulae like distant whispers of ancient civilizations, the Zarnak reigned uncontested. They were not rulers by diplomacy or economy, but by sheer terror. Towering, obsidian-skinned beings with minds wired for war. They were evolution's answer to conquest. Across hundreds of systems, their arrival was a death sentence, a silent proclamation that resistance was not just futile, it was suicidal. The empire they served didn't need to speak. The presence of a Zarnak warship on orbit was enough for most planets to surrender before a single shot was fired. To the Zarnak, the galaxy was a hunting ground, a map of prey and plunder. Sentient life was a resource, malleable, exploitable, or expendable. Empathy was considered a malfunction. Their history was etched in the ruins of fallen worlds, and their legends were built on the screams of the last survivors. It was not cruelty, it was tradition. Their generals were bred, not trained, each born from vats in bioforges older than any written language. The Zarnak remembered every war, every campaign, as a story of triumph, not for the sake of history, but to refine their violence for the next extermination. High General Varosk stood before the holomap of a system yet untouched. His six-fingered hand extended, talons tapping against the image of a blue-green world orbiting a yellow star. Earth, he said with a grunt that barely resembled speech, more thought projected through raw psychic force. Designated primitive. No warp capability. No defenses of note. Why is this even on my schedule? The briefing officer, a smaller creature from a subjugated race, trembled beneath the general's gaze. There was an incident. A scout ship intercepted unauthorized signals, dense encryption, non-standard frequencies. The patterns were erratic, but complex. Complex, Varosk echoed, almost amused. You waste my time over a primitive species that stumbled onto a math puzzle. No, General, the officer said quickly. The scout never returned. It sent fragments before being destroyed. Something on that planet adapted to the scout's signal protocols and fed it false data. It looped itself into a logic trap and self-terminated. For the first time in decades, Varosk paused. The Zarnak had seen resistance before, but never confusion. Theirs was a culture where information flowed one way, downward, absolute. Feedback loops were only useful when they controlled them. But this was unexpected. Send a probe, he commanded. No engagement. I want observation. If this species has found a way to manipulate even a fraction of our tech. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The Empire had built itself on the assumption that no other species could reverse engineer, adapt, or outthink them. 3 days later, a black-shelled observation pod entered Earth's upper orbit. Its systems were designed to be invisible, silent, undetectable by electromagnetic scans. It hovered there, watching cities breathe and lights flicker across the globe like neurons firing in a vast, organic mind. Then it began to glitch. Its readings didn't match. Gravity fluctuations, power surges, biological readings that indicated aggressive hormonal cycles in seemingly peaceful zones. A culture that produced art and music alongside weapons that could erase continents. The machine sent reports back, but each one carried anomalies. Files arrived with corrupted code and images that couldn't be explained. A child staring directly at the probe from thousands of kilometers below. A broadcast hijacked in mid-transmission. Audio scrambled into rhythmic pulses resembling heartbeat patterns. Finally, the probe shut down, not destroyed, but seemingly convinced. Varosk smashed his hand through the side of the command table when he saw the final log. Something wasn't right. He summoned the War Council. They are beneath us, one commander scoffed. Biologicals tied to a single world. No colonization. No fleet. No weapons of interstellar scale. What threat do they pose? The unknown kind, Varosk replied, voice low. And that is the only kind worth fearing. It was then that the first Terran prisoner arrived. A scavenger ship had intercepted a small vessel drifting on the edge of a trade route. It bore crude propulsion and outdated hull plating. And inside, a single human sat smiling. His name was Darius Keen. No armor, No weapons. Just a man with a blooded face and hands that trembled from either exhaustion or excitement. It was hard to tell. They interrogated him for days. They expected resistance. They expected Faye. They got humor. "You think I'm the first?" Darius asked on the third day. "Oh, no. I'm just the one who got caught on purpose." Verusk watched the footage with narrowed eyes. He had seen brave captives before. He'd seen fanatics who welcomed death. But never this casual indifference. "What is your purpose?" the interrogator asked. "To tell you something," Darius replied, leaning forward until his breath fogged the glass between them. "And what would that be?" He grinned. "You came looking for prey, but you found a mirror." The screen cut out. Static. Then blackout. The entire interrogation chamber lost power for 6 seconds. When systems returned, Darius was gone. Not escaped, erased. As if he had never existed. Only the recording remained, looping those final words like a curse echoing through the ship's core. "You found a mirror." That night, Verusk didn't sleep. Not because he feared what he didn't understand, but because for the first time in centuries, something had looked back into the Zarnak and smirked. He turned to the stars beyond the viewport and whispered a command to the warships gathering in orbit. "Prepare the fleet. We're going to Earth." And far below, on a spinning blue planet, humanity waited, not with dread, but with anticipation. The Zarnak fleet arrived above Earth in perfect formation, a phalanx of destruction stretching across the upper atmosphere. From orbit, the warships resembled predatory insects, sleek, black, and bristling with weapons that had ended civilizations. High General Verusk stood at the helm of the flagship, his expression unreadable, his thoughts a whirlpool of calculation. He had conquered gas giants, silenced hive worlds, and disassembled orbital nations piece by piece. Earth should have been simple, but nothing about this planet had followed pattern. He deployed the first wave. In Sao Paulo, the air cracked open as gravity pulses scattered traffic like matchsticks. In Siberia, a Zarnak drop pod drilled through permafrost to deploy reconnaissance units. In Tokyo, skies darkened not from the ships, but from interference, localized clouds forming unnaturally fast as if reacting to their presence. And yet, nothing responded. No missiles, no shields, no planetary defenses, only silence. Until a message arrived. A live feed. No encryption. Just a single man standing in front of a camera inside a rundown control room, illuminated by flickering fluorescent lights. He smiled politely. "Hello, visitors. We saw you coming. You've made quite the entrance. Just wanted to say, we're not running." Verusk watched without emotion. Signals were scanned, frequencies dissected. No traps detected. "Most species panic when you show up," the human continued. "We've seen the logs. We've read the ruins. But here's the thing. We're not like most species. You're not the first threat to knock, but you might be the last." The screen went black. Then, every Zarnak warship experienced simultaneous sensor disruption. For 6.4 seconds, every targeting system flickered into static. Internal AI systems failed to synchronize. Communication stalled. Not jammed, redirected. As if something inside the fleet had suddenly decided to change the rules. Verusk ordered manual override. Nothing responded. And then came the explosions. Not from space. From within. In Cairo, a Zarnak scout was ambushed by civilians wielding devices that shouldn't have existed. Pulse disruptors keyed to alien frequencies. In Montana, drones hacked into Zarnak battle armor and reverse polarity fields, causing warriors to collapse under their own kinetic shields. In Lagos, a human child walked into a deployment zone and simply stared. The soldiers froze, their psionic fields overwhelmed by a presence that didn't compute. The child walked away. Minutes later, the entire battalion lost contact. The humans had adapted faster than any simulation predicted. Earth was not defenseless. It was waiting, not with superior firepower, but with understanding. The Zarnak had studied war as science. Humanity had made it art. Darius Keene returned. His image flashed across Zarnak monitors in every quadrant. No source, no feed, just him, arms folded, standing in front of a wall covered in ancient war memorabilia. Helmets, flags, a scorched teddy bear. "You assumed we'd fight fair," he said softly. "That would face you on open ground. But Earth doesn't win wars by force. We win them by becoming what our enemies fear most. You should have read more carefully. You mistook chaos for weakness." Psychic waves pulsed across the fleet. Untraceable, non-lethal, at first. But within seconds, Zarnak's soldiers began convulsing. Their minds weren't being attacked. They were being overwritten. Their own battle memories triggered recursive trauma loops, playing failures from past victories as if they'd lost them instead. Entire squads self-terminated to escape the feedback. Vorusk slammed his fist into the control matrix. "What is this?" A lower officer, pale and sweating, whispered, "They've turned us inward." Human history was now a weapon. Propaganda spliced with battle telemetry. Audio clips of Hiroshima laid over images of alien ruin. Soundtracks from Earth's darkest hours pumped through psychic amplifiers, triggering emotional conflict in a species that had never felt regret before. Humanity didn't invent fear, but it had perfected it. The second wave never launched. Vorusk gathered the remaining commanders in person. Their minds, usually shielded by unbreakable neural discipline, trembled with unease. "They are not superior," one muttered. "They are insane." "No," Vorusk corrected. "They are something else. Something that never needed to conquer stars to master war. They let the horror live inside them." Silence fell. Outside, Earth skies shimmered with artificial auroras, low-orbit satellites broadcasting manipulated light frequencies that interfered with Zarnak optical enhancements. Their vision was failing. Their minds frayed. Still, Vorusk refused to retreat. He deployed the last measure. A Titan-class warframe descended near Greenland, 40 meters tall, armed with plasma cores capable of melting tectonic plates. It was designed for one purpose, endgames. But when it landed, it found no army. No tanks. No resistance. Just Darius, standing alone on the ice. The warframe targeted him. Then it fell. No explosion. No strike. It just collapsed. Later analysis revealed every subroutine had been rewritten mid-air. A virus planted not in their machines, but in their minds. Human behavior was unpredictable, illogical, dangerous, and that was the secret. Humanity didn't fight wars to win. It fought wars to survive, to adapt, to learn faster than its enemies could destroy. Every loss was a lesson, every trauma, a blueprint. The Zarnak had never truly lost before, and now they couldn't stop losing. Vorusk, staring down at Earth's surface, felt something he couldn't name. A sensation alien to his species. Not defeat, not shame, dread. He issued the retreat order, not out of fear for his soldiers, but fear for what Earth might become if provoked further. As the fleet turned away, the stars behind Earth shimmered with unnatural rhythm. Morse code in a forgotten tongue, pulsing a single phrase across the void. "You were warned." Vorusk closed his eyes, and Earth vanished from the tactical map. Not because it was gone, but because the system refused to render it anymore. Something had changed. Something had been awakened. The Galactic Senate convened in a chamber that floated above the gas giant Solon Prime, where translucent walls allowed delegates to see the swirling storms below, an endless churn of chaos beneath a delicate illusion of control. The Zarnak seat remained empty. Whispers rippled through the hall like static. No one dared say it aloud, but the truth sat heavy in every mind present. The Empire's enforcers, the unshakable apex species, had fled from a single world. Not destroyed, not outnumbered, but broken. The representative of the Sci-Fi hive, a species long brutalized by Zarnak conquest, spoke first. "If they can make the Zarnak retreat, what are they?" No answer came. No name was offered. Even uttering the word human seemed to carry weight now, like invoking a curse. On Earth, the atmosphere calmed. The skies cleared. The satellites resumed civilian functions. But humanity did not celebrate. There were no parades, no announcements of victory, only a return to routine, as if nothing had changed. Except everything had. Darius Keene walked the ruins of the Greenland impact zone, his breath fogging in the morning chill. He wore no uniform, carried no medals. In his hand was a tablet scrolling through intercepted transmissions. He read each word without expression. "They are trying to make sense of us," said a voice behind him. He turned slightly. Dr. Violetta Shah, a behavioral strategist once laughed out of global conferences for her theories on cognitive warfare, approached with measured steps. "They won't," Darius replied. "They are afraid," she said. "They should be." There was no pride in his tone, no satisfaction, just certainty. The Empire's mistake wasn't in underestimating humanity's technology. It was in failing to understand the species behind it. A species that didn't conquer by default, but by necessity. One that thrived not in dominance, but in adaptation. An adaptation had never been peaceful. The Zarnak had assumed humanity would resist with weapons. Instead, humans had used their own fear as a weapon, reflected it, multiplied it, and sent it back. In orbit, fragments of fallen ships were still being analyzed. Zarnak tech was advanced, but rigid, predictable, designed for efficiency, not creativity. In contrast, Earth's countermeasures had been inconsistent, chaotic, improvised, and devastatingly effective. Not because they were perfect, but because humans had expected failure and built strategies to evolve from it instantly. The final report reached the Empire's core systems 2 cycles later. Sealed under emergency protocol, it described Earth's psychological profile as nonlinear, unstable, and categorically incompatible with conventional threat models. The document concluded with a single directive: avoid engagement, initiate quarantine, do not provoke. The Senate accepted the recommendation unanimously. Vorosk did not. He stood alone aboard a disabled Zarnak carrier, drifting in a secure field outside the Empire's borders. Officially, he was recovering from psychic collapse. In truth, he was waiting for what even he did not know. His mind, once a cathedral of discipline, was now a labyrinth of doubt. He replayed Darius's last message again. "You looked into the abyss and saw yourselves. That's the real reason you left. Not because you were beaten. Because you understood too late. We're not like you. We're worse." The words echoed deeper each time. Vorosk had studied human behavior for months since the retreat. Every attempt to categorize them failed. Their literature, art, and entertainment contradicted their history. They celebrated love, but glorified violence. They wept for strangers yet waged war without pause. Every empire needed order to survive. But Earth seemed to thrive in entropy. He opened a file, classified, retrieved by a scout moments before its destruction. A video. No weapons. No blood. Just a montage of human faces across history. Laughing, crying, screaming, singing. 1 billion emotions in 1,000 languages. At the end, a phrase in Earth's fractured common tongue. "You fear us because we feel everything, and still endure." He closed the file. Back on Earth, Darius sat with Violetta beside a makeshift fire outside what had once been a Zarnak impact crater. She watched him quietly. "They'll come back," she said eventually. "Yes," he agreed. "But not as conquerors. Diplomats." No, he poked the fire with a stick. "Witnesses. What do we do until then?" He looked out over the horizon where ruins met skyline, where scorched ground slowly regrew with stubborn green. "We wait. We prepare. And we remember." Violetta tilted her head. "Remember what?" He met her gaze. "That we didn't win because we're stronger. We won because we refused to be understood." A breeze stirred the ash, lifting it into the air like ghosts fleeing the ground. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the sky, satellites turned, not outward, but inward, watching not for invasion, but for signs of change. Because Earth had changed. The question now was simple. Had the galaxy changed with it? The first Zarnak envoy returned to Earth under cover of shadow, its vessel wrapped in cloaking fields that bent light and sound until it was more myth than machine. The Empire called it a non-contact contact, an observation without interference, an approach without presence. Yet the very act of sending anything back to Earth was monumental. It meant they had begun to ask not just how humans had done it, but why. That was a dangerous curiosity. And for the first time in their long, brutal history, the Zarnak were beginning to wonder if power alone was enough to survive. The envoy arrived at the same impact site where Darius Keene had once stood. But this time, there were no ruins, no defenses, just a small building with solar panels, satellite dishes, and a garden lined with wildflowers, bright, defiant things growing in the soil once scorched black. Inside, Darius waited. He hadn't aged much, but something in his eyes had changed. Less intensity, more stillness. As the door opened and the Zarnak figure stepped in, he didn't rise. He simply motioned to the opposite chair. "You didn't knock?" he said. The envoy didn't speak. Not with words. Their species communicated in layered psychic pulses, memory patterns, emotional projections. But they had learned enough of human custom to simulate language through a voice box, a deep, alien rasp trying to sound like reason. "We expected destruction," it said. "Instead, you offered silence." Darius nodded. "We've learned that sometimes the best weapon is restraint." "You claim victory." "No, we claim survival." "You left. That was your choice." The envoy studied him. In its eyes, multi-lensed, glowing faintly with residual cognition, there was no malice. Only fascination. "You refuse conquest, but not contact. Conquest is short-term. Contact is inevitable. And if we had not left?" Darius considered the question. His fingers brushed the edge of the table. "Then we would have buried our dead, counted our losses, and evolved again. That's what we do. We don't stop just because we're losing." The envoy's shoulders shifted, a gesture akin to contemplation. "Your unpredictability destabilized our command structure. We fear not your weapons, but your mindset. That's the part you can't replicate," Darius said. "You trained for victory. We trained for chaos. We're not better. We're not even smarter. We're just impossible to model." Outside, the wind picked up. Solar dust swirled across the windows, casting fractured shadows over the walls. The envoy leaned forward. "You are not peaceful." "No," Darius admitted. "But we're not mindless either. We don't want your territory. We don't want revenge. We want space, time, and the choice to decide who we become. The Empire does not allow anomaly. Then you'll lose more than just Earth." That struck something deep. The envoy's psychic field pulsed. Brief, involuntary. Not fair. Recognition. Humanity had done something no species had ever done before. Not by defeating the Zarnak, but by forcing them to see their limitations. The war hadn't been lost on the battlefield. It had been lost in the moment the Zarnak realized Earth couldn't be conquered because it had already conquered itself. Its past, its flaws, its violent nature. Humans had accepted them all and still moved forward. "We have come to listen," the envoy said at last. "Not dictate." Darius smiled faintly. That's how peace starts. Silence settled between them. Not tense, but patient. Then, outside, something changed. From orbit, hundreds of small satellites shimmered into visibility. Not human, not Zarnak, something else. A third party. They hadn't come in warships or probes. They came in silence. Watchers, observers, perhaps waiting for the moment when giants finished bleeding each other, to speak without interruption. The envoy stood. Its voice dropped. "Who are they?" "We don't know yet," Darius replied. "But maybe now, we'll have the chance to find out." The envoy's gaze lingered on him. "You will not warn your governments. They already know. The signal's been intercepted. Nobody's panicking. That's the lesson, right? We're not the same species we were when you arrived. Neither are we." As the envoy turned to leave, Darius stood as well. "Tell your leaders something." The figure paused. "Tell them we're not looking for war, but we remember everything. And if anyone comes to take from Earth again, they won't find what you found." The envoy nodded once, a gesture it had learned from watching humans mourn. Outside, the satellites aligned. Not for an attack, for communication. A message pulsed through their networks, universal in tone, undecipherable in content, yet resonant in intent. They were here to talk. And suddenly, for the first time in known galactic history, Three species stood at the edge of something none of them had ever truly practiced. Peace. But peace, like war, was never simple. It had to be earned, built, defended, not with weapons, but with trust. And Aeth, once overlooked, once underestimated, was now its most volatile architect.